Hello, and welcome to the daily conversation for the trades. I am your host, Christine Marie. Y'all, I'm excited to dive into this topic with you because personal brand has to be one of the most important conversations we can have surrounding your business. It's really your number one greatest asset. Our kids are growing up and leaving us. Our businesses might at some point get sold. Hopefully it continues to thrive, but maybe they'll fail. We have so many things in our lives that we care so much about, so many things that are actually quite like vapor. They kind of go through our fingers and we can't really grasp onto them no matter how hard we try. And so in us doing the work to cultivate our personal brands, that is something that has, honestly, one, it has eternal value. Not to make this a spiritual conversation, but there's eternal value to your brand. Who you are can outlive you. What you write, what you create, and yes, that could take the form of your business and most obviously your children. Therefore, your personal brand needs to be the very thing that's cultivated, that we spend time nurturing and expending energy, and it's like pouring life into this vessel, which is you and me. And so, y'all, for so long as we're not wanting or kind of pushing off the personal brand conversation, we're actually doing ourselves harm and those around us harm as well. The more time you and I spend in the cultivation of you and me, the better we are able to lead, to serve, to show up for our partners, business-wise, personal-wise. And so when we're talking about personal brand, let's get to the definition of terms here. I'm not talking about your LinkedIn profile. I'm talking about the quality and integrity of who you are. And so we need to start with this conversation before we can ever get to the conversation in terms of the external world around us. We need to go inward first. And then once we've done that work to really cultivate who we are, then it can be, okay, do I want to have a LinkedIn profile? Do I want to show up on Facebook? Do I want to show up in a personal website? And again, going back to these things externally that are vapor, that we cannot grasp onto, we cannot actually truly control. And if we do try to control them, usually they suffocate and wither away. The things that we cultivate within us, we then have the opportunity to, when we move on from that season of life, and then try to and seek out building perhaps another business, maybe acquiring another business, maybe it's even going and being a referral for multiple businesses. The quality of your brand, the stories you're telling, the way you're showing up, the way that you're serving and giving, so much of that is already being done today based on who you are. But if we actually want to create something that can, one, outlive us, but also that has dexterity in terms of being able to move cross industries or even move into a new business, it is helpful having the external facing assets out there in terms of, okay, let's actually not just monetize, but let's turn all that's within us, all that's you and me, and let's actually form some walls around it and make it physical and house it somewhere. So it's like taking the money that we make and putting it in the bank or putting it into an investment. And so the gold that is within you and me that we're cashing out and putting in our, investing in our family, investing in our businesses. My challenge for you and me today is let's invest this in a few other places. Let's invest this actually, yeah, in a social media profile. Let's go ahead and invest this in the way that you're creating content. There was, when the death of Charlie Kirk came around, I had that very week had a conversation with someone around the need for a personal brand for contractors. And when this accident happened, well, murder happened, I just had this thought. I was like, I'm so grateful that his kids will always know who he was because of all of the content. His content is part of his legacy. And so, y'all, as we're thinking about the legacy that we're leaving behind, the content we create helps people better know who we are. It's a capsule. That's the right word. That's the right word. It's a capsule. The more we actually create capsules with intention, whether it's authoring a book or again having that profile and creating that content, creating emails, maybe yes, having a website. Y'all, it is so helpful to have capsules that you can pass down to other leaders in your business, pass on to your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. My great grandfather started our family painting business in 1922. I wish I had something tangible from him. I wish I had something that he really left behind so I could have known this man who started this legacy, this generational business. And so, as we're talking about building your personal brand, it is for the purpose of service that we're doing this. It is not ego. And here's the thing: ego actually may come in and whisper to us things that prey on fear, like what are people going to think? What about you kind of coming off as showing off or being egotistic yourself? And that can actually limit us from really being able to serve, from bringing value. So when we think about our why are we doing this? It is for the purpose of the legacy that we're leaving behind, creating capsules that we can hand off to people, whether it's the next generation or to other business partners. And so in this now, let's talk about actually tangibly growing, how to do this, how to actually grow and create your personal brand. So one, all of us has a personal brand, whether we like to admit it or not. And so the question is, how do we strengthen and intentionally create this so that I'm living every single day with that awareness of, oh man, that decision, what I'm putting out here in the world right now is feeding into this personal brand. So number one, it's very similar to building out your company brand. What are your values, your personal values? And the way that I kind of think about actually establishing this is really actually leveraging the stories that have happened in our own personal experience. So core moments in our lives that really defined us. Maybe it was for better or for worse, but we learned something pivotal in that moment, and thus a value was established in us. And y'all, when we have values that we're passing down to our children, we know this already, that man, when we've got a story as to why this is a value, why we want you to remember this and start embodying this in your own life in the way that our family is structured, the more they're able to retain that. Stories and narratives are remembered 22 times more than facts. So the more we actually allow for stories to drive and propel our values and the way that we show up, yes, with our families, with our businesses, and in any other area, whether it's online or in person, the more our values are rooted in stories, the more they will hold emotional weight, the more they will actually hold in the memory of the listener. So your values are the hallmark of who you are in so many ways. They guide your decisions, they guide the content that you'll create, they'll guide the way that you actually show up online and in person. And so your values are tethered to core stories of experiences that you had in your life. So an example of this, I'll just make it, well, I'll make it oriented with the family. So my dad, I was working with our family business and creating the company brand, but in so doing, I was really diving into who my dad is, because for when I first got started, he was the business in so many ways, and in that process, there was a huge focus on communication. And in me diving in and just really understanding, why do you care so much about communication? Why does I have this fruit fly literally flying in my face? It's so rude. Why do you care so much about customer communication? Why is that a value to you? Why is that something that you really hold on to and infiltrate into every single element of the business and the way that you lead and the way that you encourage your team to show up? And it all tied back to this example of him being, I think he was 19 years old, working in a customer home, when he had this moment with his customer where he wasn't being careful to communicate about some of the things that they needed to do around the house. And the customer was taken off guard, and she looked at him and she said, "Would you want that in your home?" And it was just this pivotal moment for my dad at 19 years old that forever changed and became a hallmark for his standard of, we're going to over communicate. We're going to set every single expectation right out of the gate. And now when he says to his team, to the rest of the staff, y'all, we communicate because, and then he's got a story that really adds weight and it grounds the value in and of itself. So now this value isn't floating in the ether. It's grounded in a real life applicable story that now they know, oh yeah, okay, if I'm going to go into this person's house, let me treat it like my own. And so to that point, y'all, this is why values driven and derived from story are the most powerful and make the greatest impact. And that story, that's a great post for social media. That story is a great example and a great lesson for us to then compound on that. It doesn't just hang on the wall in our office around our company values or our personal values, but they're to be shared, they're to be taught. And y'all, the more we can serve as teacher, the more we're able to give and serve, and it expands the awareness of who you are, the services that you offer, and how you could potentially partner with others in the future. So what is your value? What is the story it's rooted in? And then take 6, 7, 8 core values and stories, and then it's capitalizing on them. What are all the use cases for these? So when we're talking about building a personal brand, it starts with value, but it extends down and deeper into what are the core stories associated with each one of these values. Because there's another thing too. That might be the root story of what caused that value to be established for, say, my dad. But there's many other stories that happened that both strengthened that value and also serves as a case of this is why we need to keep this as a value for my personal self and our company. And then in terms of the application, that's further content. So when we're talking about social media in relation to your personal brand, it might sound like, or you might feel what do I have to talk about? Y'all, there's so much, because when you really lean into your own personal why, your own personal values, there's so much driving you on a subconscious level. The element here that's just the little bit of the trick and the light switch is bringing all of the values, all of the stories out from just the subconscious drivers and motivation, and just being conscious around them. Being like, man, I've got a lot to say and you've got a lot to give. And so that's the core reason why your personal brand is most important, is to leverage everything that you've got to offer, everything you've got in terms of value that can really serve other people. And then the benefit in you giving, you shall receive. And so you'll attract the right employees, you'll attract the right customers, you'll attract new business deals. People are watching and people are listening. People want and need to work with you. And I had somebody reach out to me 2 years later after we had our initial conversation. He said, hey, I've been seeing your social media content. I really, really appreciate what you're putting out there. Thank you. I have a new business opportunity for your family business and painting. It was awesome. I hadn't spoken to this gentleman in 2 years, but he'd been watching. He'd been receiving value along the way. So when he had a referral, immediately we came to mind because he had that connection with us. Y'all, our why for posting on social media is so much deeper than just show up. It's really offering service, offering value. And so then the question is, okay, so what are your values? What is your why? And then who are you serving? And really getting passionate around that. I was hosting a lunch with the craft and calling community. And I was driving there and I was like, man, I want to remember my why. And so I listened to episode 1 of season 1 of the Craft and Calling podcast on my way. It's about 30 minutes. And man, I was listening and I got fired up. I was like, I love this community. I want to serve like these men and women who work so incredibly hard. And then private equity comes in, swoops the company away and kills the culture, kills everything that they built. No, I want to like help save people from having that experience because I've seen it. I've seen it happen. And I've also seen my dad, who's spent 45, 50 years in the trades, doing so well, working so hard, being a man of honor and communication and excellence. And I wish he hadn't gone about it by himself in isolation for so long. So hence why I'm doing this. And so those whys drive us and motivate us, but we need to actually remind ourselves of why we're doing this in the first place, who we're serving, and the values that connect the why and the audience. The values in so many ways are really the bridge, because in the values are the stories. Our values then turn into value offers for others because we've got stories, lessons baked in there at every point. So with that, I promise to keep these conversations to 15 minutes or under. We'll get a little bit more practical tomorrow as we dive deeper into real tangibles. how do we build a LinkedIn profile? How do we build a chat GPT? So we're going to go ahead and make this very actionable over the next couple of days as we continue on with this series of how to build a personal brand. But with that, thank you so much for joining me. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, even if you've got topics that you want to talk about. My partner and I at Foundation First Marketing, we offer just completely free consultations, and I love this stuff. I had a lunch yesterday or on Monday. I have another conversation today with a roofing company and a meeting up with somebody for coffee tomorrow. I really care about relationships. I really, really, really do. And I would love to help you with your business. Guys, what we're doing here in the trades, it's so important, and there's so much value there, and it hinges so often on relationships. So reach out anytime. I would love to serve you, support you. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you tomorrow as we continue our daily conversations for the trades.